Thanks very much, Steve. I think with training as a historian, it sort of struck me looking at the Belfast-Dublin connections to sort of look back to what had been done maybe before in history. And one of the things I came up with, not a person who's celebrated much in Dublin in this year of the lockout or the centenary of the lockout, is Mr. Murphy, who was the kind of architect of the lockout. But interestingly enough, he was a great man for the idea of connectivity between Dublin and Belfast, and the idea that Belfast might be a gateway to the wider world. I say he may be due a revision in some ways of his reputation. When you think of business and Intratrade Ireland as the cross-border body, our kind of key challenge there is how to increase connectivity opportunities for businesses, be they trade with customers, be they access to suppliers, or to potential partners and collaborators, often in the innovation space. And I suppose we were kind of still remain led by the idea of our first chairman, Martin Naughton, who of Glendimplex fame, whose idea was that it's a simple matter, really, cross-border cooperation. You created the opportunity to get people in a room together, business people in a room together, and let them do business. And that was as simple as that. And connectivity probably is the key thing here for business opportunities, and where infrastructure can lead to that is I had maybe a couple of things there on this issue. We usually think of transport infrastructure as a key to that, and often when these discussions happen, it's light rail within cities, or bus transport within cities, or rail links between cities. I think too we need to think broader than that, and connectivity for an island like Ireland and the cities, Belfast, Cork, Dublin and others, is their air connectivity to other routes. I mean, David has talked there about tourists. Often it's tourists leaving the island, but it's also, even more importantly, for connectivity and connections to the newer markets for tourists coming onto the island. Some good work has been done on that, but I think much more needs to be done, and probably concentrating not on spreading it too thinly, but actually thinking of a number of key airport hubs that will be the key ones for inward and outward air routes. Also, just before I leave the transport infrastructure thing, last year I did over a 12-month period, and I had an idea to see how much I could do a lot of travel across the island, and how much of that I could do using public transport, bus and train. And the idea was, not so much if you could do it in the same time as you would in a car, because bear in mind you can actually work on the bus or the train where you can't where you're driving, but could you do it in a rational way that it didn't take double the time, or that you had Wi-Fi connection and you could actually use mobile devices when you were actually travelling by train and bus. The good news, I suppose, in some ways is in bus transport, I would actually recommend bus transport to people if they are travelling around the island. Bus services are regular, they're fairly reasonable. Train transport, on the other hand, suffers, I suspect, if you take Dublin Cork out of it, from the lack of regularity of services. Steve has talked about the golden hour. It would be even great if you had a regular service from Dublin to Belfast, an hourly service, something like that you actually knew on the hour, on the half hour, there's going to be a service, not an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes later, which makes it impossible for business travel for most people, unless you're there for the day. So I suppose that's it on transport infrastructure. I'm conscious of time, and maybe in the questions after, the issue was raised about the UK running out of landfill sites by 2018 unless more are opened and used. Make an appeal here really as well to think more rationally about how we move waste back and forward. One of the biggest problems for waste infrastructure, leaving aside landfill, but other waste infrastructure on the island, be it waste to energy, be it anaerobic digestion, be it even the whole recyclate industry, is actually getting a feedstock of waste that can move back and forward across the border. We have trans-frontier shipment of waste regulations, very good regulations to stop illegal movements of waste, of which there has been a problem on the island. But there are opportunities there, I suspect, to actually treat the island as a whole unit. You still have the regulations there, but not the paperwork and the burden and so on the legal movements of waste. And that might free up regulators to actually look at the illegal movements of waste back and forward across the island. It has been done in Germany and Austria and other places. It might be a radical solution, but I think it'd be a good solution in terms of the waste infrastructure here on the island. Enough feedstock to actually make those investment opportunities make sense. And from the Intratrade Ireland perspective, an innovation infrastructure is key. Professor Marianne Elliott mentioned before the break about higher education, and I think I probably would say that anyway as a fellow historian. She's absolutely right on that. The higher education institutions are key in terms of the accessing knowledge and so on in the future. And in terms of kind of better innovation, we did a study in Intratrade last year which looked at what the innovation ecosystem was like and the connections within that by companies. And there were worrying results in that. You'll hear later on from Martin Curley and Intel, and certainly at the Intel level of things, there's great work going on in terms of open innovation and seeking innovation collaboration with partners. But the vast majority of our firms here, North and South, are small to medium-sized firms. And in fact, the vast majority of them are micro firms and small firms of less than 50 employees. And at that level, innovation, where partnership goes on, it tends to be with your customers and your suppliers within your value chain only. Not enough's been done with universities. Now, I think it's a two-way process. I think for firms themselves, it's about understanding what the risks and the opportunities are there. But I think also, and it's an appeal, I think, to academics. Academics have got much better in terms of actually outreach and reaching out not only to business but to the community more generally. But I think more needs to be done. There's a shy culture among many academics about doing that, and I think that needs to be overcome. I think if that is done, the opportunities and the benefits for North and South will be huge. And I'll leave it at that.